Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check the Jumbotron first, before attempting to eat a stack of Supreme nachos in one bite. Now you're just a meme that everyone shares on game day. Checking first is smart, so check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Business taxes. We're stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service.
Welcome to the Turnaround Series presented by CoachTube, the go-to platform for coaches who want to learn from the best. If you're working to turn a program around, you know that success isn't just about effort. It's about having the right resources, a proven plan, and access to insights that make a difference. Learning from those who have done it before, using detailed and tested strategies, can be the key to transforming your team. That's exactly what we're bringing you in this series, hosted by Michael Chavez. We'll break down key decisions, leadership strategies, and cultural shifts that have helped coaches rebuild and redefine their programs. And with CoachTube, you don't just hear about these turnarounds, you gain access to the same on-demand training and expertise that have fueled real coaching success. Let's get to it. This is the Turnaround Series, powered by CoachTube.
He actually challenged me. He's like, I want to know what your vision for the football program is. And so I gave it quite a bit of thought, and I wrote this. I said, to build and maintain a successful football program that competes for a championship every year, along with their achievements on the field, my players will develop a hard work ethic, positive winning attitude, confidence, self-control, team unity, a caring heart, and strong moral values. My goal is for every kid and their parents in the entire town of Montrose to want to play football.
All right, welcome back to the Turnaround Series podcast, where we are talking to coaches around the nation about their experience taking over a struggling program and turn it into a winner. Today, we're excited to have Coach Brett Mertens on the Turnaround podcast. Coach Mertens has been at the forefront of two turnarounds in his coaching career. First at Crean Lutheran in Southern California, where he started a program from scratch, and within 7 years, third year as head coach, he led the team to a 9-4 record and semifinal appearance. Then Coach took his family and talents back to Colorado, where he inherited a 5-5 team and led them to a 7-4 record. And since his takeover, they've gone 76-19. A coach is actually celebrating his 100th game coaching at Montrose next season. We're excited about that. But in his 8-year tenure, they've had 7 consecutive quarterfinal appearances, 4 semifinal appearances, and 1 final appearance. Coach, such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's fun to be here.
Well, Coach, let's start from the beginning and give us just kind of a brief overview of your experience taking over a program from scratch and leading Crean Lutheran to what it is.
Yeah, it was unique. I don't think that not very many people get that opportunity. It was a brand new school. They didn't have football at the time. I think it was year 3 of the school. They started it in, I believe 2007 was year 1 of the high school. And I came in 2009. I knew at that time the principal was Jeffrey Beavers. He's still at Crean. He's the executive director now, but him and I were kind of friends. He called me and said, hey, we're going to start a football program and we want you guys to come be a part of it. And my wife and I were newly married. We were 20, I think we were 22 or 23, might have been 23 and didn't have any kids yet. So we moved all the way across the country to Southern California, because I wanted to be a high school football coach and just felt like this was something that I guess God wanted us to do. And it was an opportunity that we couldn't pass up. And
just to confirm, inherited a bunch of varsity ready players, right?
Yeah, exactly. Our first year there in 2009, we had 19 total kids that said that they were going to come out. Honestly, we begged most of those kids to just kind of promise them like, hey, this will be good. The school needs this. And of those 19, we had 2 kids that had ever put on football pads before. And that's any level, even Pee Wee's, Pop Warner, you name it. We only had 2 kids with any sort of experience whatsoever. I mean, it was a complete different experience than anything I've ever been used to coaching. It was actually really good for me. It kind of humbles you out pretty quick and helps you start thinking about what's important. What do these kids actually need? You know, we're obviously not going to be teaching them how to block, counter, tray. We're going to be teaching them how to put on their pads and, do stuff like that. So it was a unique experience for sure.
Yeah. Well, Coach, tell us about the process of taking that squad that started out with 19 with no football experience to, your first year taking over the program. You could, again, briefly talk about your time as an assistant and then your opportunity to take over the program. I think it's important, too, to kind of hit on the fact that you're a young coach. It was a great opportunity for you. You cut your teeth. And like you've told me in the past, you wouldn't be at Montrose if it weren't for your work at Crean.
Yeah, I was 23 and I got the opportunity to be the offensive coordinator and call plays. And at 23, you think you know everything, but you really don't know anything yet. It was amazing because at 23, you normally don't get that opportunity. And so that's why it was good. And then at age 27, to be able to get, to be a head coach, that experience and that sort of thing, at a school like Montrose where you're coming in, if you don't have, head coaching experience, it's not that they won't hire you, but it is a experience that was amazing for me. I learned so much, matured a lot just personally, and what was important. I remember yelling at kids, at Crean that I'm like, why did I yell at that kid? And so you just learn from all those mistakes and you become a better person and you start treating kids the right way. And then eventually you start to figure some things out and kids will eventually play hard and that's how you build it. So it is definitely something that I look back with such fond memories. Me and my 2 good friends that helped start that program, Dave Kristoviak was the head coach. Matt Bowman was our 3rd guy that was helping us. And we laugh about now all the funny stories that we have from that first year, especially, of kids that don't know how to put their pads on correctly, to some of the drills we were doing just to stay sane because we didn't even score a touchdown in year 1. And so we weren't worried about trying to win. That's the God's honest truth. We were worried about just trying to get through the season so that we didn't have to cancel our program so that we could play again next year and try to build something. And we made it through by the grace of God. And no one even cares that we went 0-10. We made it through the season and no one, ended up in the hospital. And that was a success for us that year. And I told all those kids, I said, you guys are going to look back on this and you're going to be proud of the fact that you were the first team, even though you didn't win a game. Because now, Crean's pretty established and they have a good thing going on. And that those boys, those 19 kids that did that in year 1, that in a lot of ways, it took a lot more courage to do that than it does to play football when you're good.
It's such a great point, Coach. Coach, tell me about that process of being obviously taking over the program for those years as an assistant and then getting your first shot as a head coach. You said, I think 26 or 27, and talk about like so many of us, how we feel like we know what's going on until we actually get into the thick of it and realize how little football we know, how little we know about winning.
Yeah.
And the process of discovering how you were going to win football games.
Well, I think the first thing that you realize is that you don't win by calling good plays and by drawing stuff on the whiteboard. And I learned that pretty quick, honestly, especially when I took over in year 1. We went 1-9 that year. And I think I shared with you before, but we had 5 seniors, only 2 of them started. And so we were playing a lot of young kids. And frankly, I didn't know a whole lot, but it didn't even matter. The reality is that we needed to invest in kids' lives. We needed to invest in families' lives in our school. We needed to get them bought into trying to catch the vision of the football program that we wanted. And that really came down to just caring about kids and people. I think that's more important, honestly. I think that if you're trying to start something or build something and you don't do it that way, if you don't do it through relationships and through truly genuinely caring about what the other person is feeling and thinking at that time, then you're missing the whole point. And you might even win a game or two here and there, but to achieve any sort of sustained success, you can't fake that authenticity, in my opinion. That's definitely advice that I would have for anybody else in those shoes is just, you have to truly be selfless, and you have to not worry about yourself or your own records or whatever you want to say. And you have to make it about what does this kid need in this moment right now in order for him to play as hard as he can. And as long as you got kids that are willing to play as hard as they can, how can you can't even get mad at them if they lose. They're giving you everything they got. And so that's been the I'd say honestly the number one thing. I do consider that even today my number one job as the head coach is to motivate kids to play hard and to really sacrifice for the program and just buy into what we're trying to do as a program. And in order to do that, it's really all about what that kid needs at that time. So
and we're going to get to that. I think one of the things that we kind of touched on is what it's like to build that sustainability. And in our previous conversation, I love what you said your role is now is really kind of worried about the sustainability of the success you've built. But I want to step back to two things. One is, we'll focus on the first one, but there was a strategic move that you made as a coach from your first to second year in regards to position coaching. Tell us about how you shifted to the O-line and what that did for your team and a reason why you did that.
Sure. Yeah. So first year as head coach, and again, we're at Crean at the time. And so, we're still not getting kids that are football players. We're really not. We are at that time. I think our school had maybe 500 kids in it. So we were up to maybe low 30s in the program. My first year, maybe, I'm not even sure it was that high. It might've been like right around 28, 30. And so I really sat down with, and this is sidetracked just a little bit, but I think it's important. But I sat down with our strength, and we had a strength guy who was an assistant coach for me too. I sat down with our athletic director, and I kind of shared the vision that I had. And obviously, like a big part of that vision was we had to find a way to get more kids out for football, whether that be in our own hallways or frankly, being in a private school in California, we had to find a way for kids to enroll at Crean that had any sort of football. And so, we started doing a lot of things, just different, just out of the box things that actually started to make football cool, even before we started winning.
Yeah.
One specific one, it kind of sounds dumb, but after every single workout, I had this refrigerator and I had a lock on it. And the only people that had a key were me and our strength guy. And after every football workout, we would give every kid one of those Gatorade protein shakes.
Yep.
And everybody else in the whole school wanted one, and we would just lock it back up and be like, you got to come out for football.
Do you want this?
Yeah. It sounds kind of dumb, but like, it just was, the whole goal was trying to make football cool at Crean. Because I honestly, like, the first few years it wasn't, who's going to want to go out there and just get clobbered? So that was kind of a side thing. But year one goes by and we go 1-9. And that was kind of, all this kind of happened in the off season where we're talking about this. Strategic move for personnel was when I really sat back and evaluated, like, what do we need to do to be more successful on the field and more competitive? I really felt like we needed a better line. Like, we needed more competitiveness on our line. We needed kids to fire off the ball and block harder. And so I took over coaching the offensive line as the head coach that second year as my head coach. And that's the position group that I've coached ever since.
What position did you play growing up?
Quarterback in high school and safety on defense. And so I had very limited experience, with line. And I'll tell you this, that's when I finally started to learn the game. Was when I started coaching the O-line, because then you learn all the different blocking schemes and you learn how it fits together with what you're doing skill-wise. And, as a play caller, after I started coaching the line, you don't call the game based on your skill kids. You call the game based on the front you're looking at, and the techniques you're looking at on the D-line. And so you become so much better as a play caller, and you start to learn actually what you're doing, rather than just kind of guessing and doing what you want to do. So, I mean, that was a huge shift for me personally, and something that I just felt like was the right thing for Crean, and it paid off immediately. I mean, we immediately got significantly better, and just the kids started, I think when the head coach is invested in the offensive line, I think the kids are like, okay, we gotta go, and then I'm able to coach it the way I want. And I'll be honest with you, especially year one, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I know how to put your hand in the dirt and fire off the ball. and get after people, right? And so, we can work on where to go and which guy to block later, but we had to just line up and learn how to just hit people. And I'll tell you that even to this day, people would laugh at the drills we do on the O-line. And we rushed for 5,000 yards this year. So our O-line's highly respected in the state of Colorado. And we don't do anything fancy. We go in the chutes every day. We hit the sled twice a week. And I mean, it's just simple stuff, but it's all about get off and coming off the ball as hard as you can. And that's where we started that. And I really feel like that was a kind of a game changer for obviously the Crean program, but for me and my entire career is just being willing to invest in that O-line and really kind of make that what I wanted to do. I plan on coaching the O-line forever now.
Well, awesome, Coach. From first year to second year, there's something I think that's pivotal that happened with your program that I know, you tell it as a funny story, but I think it really kind of comes back to the ethos of what you're about. Tell us about your team that I think went 5-5 in year 2 or 6-4.
6-4, yeah. We stuck in the playoffs, and yeah.
You lost first round or second round?
We lost in the first round.
Yeah, but tell me about that experience and the team you went up against, and then the.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, it was a really cool experience for Crean as a school because we had our first winning record, and I think it was 2012. It'd be 14, all the way to 14. Geez. Oh, 2014. So we're 6-4. We had a winning record, and we had beaten a league school. We beat Sage Hill that year, and so things were kind of trending up. We had a lot of positive things, and so in general, the school was really excited about football. So we get in the playoffs, and we got Saddleback Valley Christian that year, and they were stacked that year. That was back. I don't even think they have the school might not even be there anymore. But back then, 10 years ago, they had it going on with football, honestly. And so it was a pretty tough draw. We had to go on the road, and we were just getting blown out. And I remember you know how you kind of just know fairly early on as a coach, mid first quarter, I'm like, I don't think we really got what it takes today to actually win. But obviously we're not going to tell the kids that we're gonna compete hard, and we're gonna fire them up and enjoy the moment. And so, but the story is we get to half, and I let my defensive coach talk first, and he came in and gave a feisty pep talk. He's like, all right, this is what we got to do to get back in the game. And when it was my turn, I pulled up a chair and I sat down, and real quiet, I said, hey, we're not going to win. So you guys got one more half together. I want you to go out there, and I want you to enjoy playing your last half of football together ever, and make it something that you can remember. And it was a really cool thing because it kind of I felt like the air kind of came back into the room. And the kids were like, yeah, you're right, coach. We're not. And so let's just go have fun and let's ball out. And they did. And they played great. And I remember actually had the one guy that I will never forget is Dave Kristoviak. He was the previous head coach prior to that. He had flown all the way back to come to the first playoff game. And he caught me after the game, and he said, what did you tell him at halftime? And I told him, and he laughed, and he's like, that must have been the greatest halftime speech ever, because they played way harder, way better. And so it was cool. It was something that I'll never forget for sure. And I think it's bigger than winning, right? I mean, that was a big moment for our program, first playoff game ever. And obviously they wanted to win, but at that time, they didn't need their butts chewed. They needed to be built up and lifted up on what they already had accomplished.
Yeah. I think that's a theme that's going to emerge not only with you and your experience, but the other coaches that I talk to. Is I think in a turnaround, there's a blend of two things. There is definitely very strategic moves that you have to make, but it's also coupled with an intense, I think, passion and love for the players and for the program and community. And let's step into that third year where you're able to lead them to a 9-4 record. What strategic steps did you take to get your team to that level?
So we kind of had at least I had a feeling going in that we might be kind of turning the corner. So at this point, we're at almost 60 players in the program. And so, and we're looking at 15 seniors all of a sudden, which is something that we hadn't had. And so what's that?
From 5 in year 1 to 3.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And kids that had been 3-year starters for me, because that year, my first year when we didn't have the seniors, they had to play. And so honestly, the first thing I did, because even that record's a little deceiving, because we stepped up our strength of schedule. Up until this point, we hadn't really played a lot of good schools and certainly hadn't beat anybody that was real good yet. And so in that year 3, we felt like it was time to really challenge these kids with, all right, if we're really going to start winning, we got to start playing some good teams and we got to get after people. So we played Mission Prep. We played Saddleback Valley Christian again early just to kind of see where we were at. There's 2 games in that year that I'll never forget. Actually, more than that, but the first one, which we beat a team that we had never beat. It was Capel Valley Christian.
Yes.
And we beat them on the road, and that was a big momentum game for us because that was just a team that who had been getting blown out by in years past. And then the biggest, probably even to this day, honestly, that we've won a lot of playoff games and made the state finals, but probably the number one win in my entire career was that season when we upset St. Margaret's.
Wow.
And we ended their 15-year winning streak in league, and so and we won a league title that year. And so, the competitiveness of that team, took Crean to a level where all of a sudden they were respected at throughout the whole southern section. And I think kind of established a new sort of, foothold for what could be done at that school, and I think that's obviously been done since I left as well. And so that was a year that I'll never forget. It was a very satisfying year to be able to, for me personally, just for the amount of work. Because, you go, okay, you did that in 7 years, but I truly don't know that very many people understand what it takes to start a program and the amount of effort and work that went into that, and the amount of, just nights where I'm like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. And then, to have that be able to come to fruition and we get in the playoffs and then we're able to win 2 playoff games, first playoff wins in school history, and made it all the way to the Final Four and almost won the Final Four game. And so had just really a tremendous season, and I'm sure you'll get into this, but frankly, in the weirdest way that it sounds, it almost made it easier for me to be done there and close that chapter in my book and move to Colorado, which was something that we were going to do, probably regardless, but it was just like, I remember having that feeling of like, we did what we set out to do.
Yeah.
And now it's time to, to go do something else. So it was cool. And I still talk to a lot of those boys on the team. And I think it was just, like you said, relationships were amazing. I've get invited to their weddings still. And I'm like, guys, I can't fly all the way to California to go to these weddings. It's humbling to be asked. And so it's very cool. I have a lot of fond memories from that particular team. It's probably, to be honest, it might even be my favorite team. I don't know how to rank them, but it was a cool year for me. So it was fun.
Awesome, Coach.
What if you could get inside the heads of elite coaches and championship leaders, learning their strategies, techniques, and philosophies anytime, anywhere? That's exactly what CoachTube delivers. This isn't just another video platform. CoachTube is a technology platform built for coaches by coaches, giving you on-demand access to detailed, proven instruction straight from the best in the game. The courses you'll find here aren't created by a production company. They come directly from the coaches, state associations, and charities like Lawrence First and Goal, sharing their expertise to help others grow. And when you purchase a course, you're not just improving yourself, you're supporting those coaches and organizations who are giving back to the game. If you're a coach with knowledge to share, CoachTube makes it easy to create and distribute your own training content. Teach what you know, help others coach, and build your brand. Visit CoachTube.com to explore courses or reach out to me, Keith, at CoachTube, if you're ready to share your expertise.
Whether it's a movie night or just midday, Skinny Pop is a salty snack that keeps on giving. Made with just 3 simple ingredients for an irresistibly delicious taste and a large serving size that lasts. Deliciously popped, perfectly salted. Skinny Pop, popular for a reason. Shop Skinny Pop now.
I want to pause here because I'm not sure if we're going to get it at Montrose. But do you feel, I definitely felt these moments of great despondency and discouragement in my second rebuild especially. But did you feel that in the Crean rebuild? Did you have a moment where you felt like, man, this sucks. I don't see a way forward, or I am exhausted. I don't know how we're going to get through this. I feel like if you don't have that, that's totally fine. But
Yeah.
I feel like it's so important for coaches that are rebuilding.
I think that moment probably happened pretty early when we, like, even when it was like 19 kids and they never played, it was like, honestly, my honest thoughts were, I just don't know if this is smart. I'm like, what are we doing right now?
Hey, everybody.
And so, I think the benefit that I had at that time in my life was that I was young. It sounds weird, but I didn't have kids yet. I think if I would have, it would have been hard for me to justify time away from my kids without much to look forward to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I think God puts you in specific places for a reason. Yeah. And I think at that particular time in my life, it was one of those things where it was the spot that we needed to be. And for me personally, but also for those kids and for that program. I mean, not everybody, there's a reason why me and those other coaches got that position at age 23, because no one else wanted it. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of patience and perseverance, and we were willing to do that at that point. And so I don't know that I ever had like a, what am I doing? It was more just like, I don't know. But yeah, and once we kind of got a little better, and truly, then again, I got kind of rejuvenated when I got my chance to be the head coach, because, that was my first opportunity to be a head coach, and I was bound and determined to make it successful. And so I think that it kind of just timed out well. And, so I don't have a big one for that now.
That's perfect. Coach, let's now transition to your time at Montrose. So lead us through what it was like taking over the program. And I know you're going to hit on the 2 years that weren't as successful. Montrose had been successful before you got there, but they were in some down years. And lead us through that process, and then how you ended up building that program into now a perennial, quarterfinalist, finalist team.
I think it's important, to even go back a little bit to you and I. We spoke a little bit about when I even interviewed for that job. Western Colorado is where Montrose is. It's a unique place if you've never been, but it's pretty isolated. If you're in California, think Lompoc. Like it's 4 or 5 hours away from any city. But that's what I wanted. That's what I'm a farm kid. And so for me, I wanted to raise my family in a small town, and I wanted to be in a place like this. And I love the outdoors. And so when the Montrose job came available, actually it would have been before the 2015 season while I was still at Crean. And so I knew some people out here. And so I got a hold, and I interviewed and applied for the job, and it actually went really well. I think probably, to be honest, might have even gotten offered the job if I would have been able to move out there right away. But it just wasn't. It wasn't like I had a house to sell. I had 2 young kids, and there was just no way that we could just get up and move. We had to finish the school year. So a coach by the name of Jim Scarry actually got the job, and he was a longtime assistant coach at that time. Yeah, and so he got the job, and ironically, he was the first person to call me after my interview, and he said, "Hey, just want to let you know that I accepted the head football job." And I'm like, "Okay, like congrats, I guess." I didn't get it, but he was so nice to me, and he said, because he was actually on the interview committee, which was unique, and so he said, "Hey, everybody loves you, and we really want you to be the next head football coach at Montrose." And I took the job so that I could make that happen. It was a really, I guess, a humbling thing, because, I guess you had to put your faith in that. We just had a handshake deal, but he pretty much said, he's like, "We want you to move out here in your time. I want do the things you need to do with your family, and get out here, and however long that takes. And then when the time is right, I'll let you be the, transition it to you." And he was a capable football person. I mean, he had been a head coach before. And so it wasn't like they had a dad coaching the team. I mean, so it wasn't a terrible situation for them. But I just remember thinking, like, man, that's crazy. Like, I really felt God was kind of putting him in our lives to be able to do that. And so, so we coached that whole 2015 season, which I've told you was a tremendous, remarkable season that I'll never forget. And then, we stayed in touch, and as soon as that season ended, he's like, "Hey, we still got that job." I was a math teacher at the time, and so come teach math. We'll hire you. And so I remember I actually signed a contract and agreed to move out there in like January of 2016. My wife didn't have a job. We had a handshake deal that I was going to eventually be the head coach, but it was cool. And I think that the the moral of that I kind of want people to know is that you do have to trust people, and you do have to, you judge people based on their character, and I trusted Jim, and I trusted the people in Montrose, and I just had a good feeling about it that like, hey, it might not happen right away, but this is going to be a great spot that I can see myself being for the rest of my career, and a place where I want to raise my family. And I just need to take a leap of faith here and go for this. And I think eventually good things are going to happen. And that's what we did. And I mean, it was crazy. Like, we got put to the test. I mean, my wife didn't have a job. My son was born 6 weeks before we moved. He got diagnosed with cystic fibrosis 3 weeks before we moved, and it was honestly, my wife and I laugh about it now, but we had sold our house 3 weeks earlier. And it's probably a good thing that our house had sold, because we might have just taken it right off the market and stayed. There was just enough chaos in our life at that time where it was like, man, is this really the right thing to do? But again, we just went for it. And so got here, and another guy that had given me the job was our principal, and he had kind of handshake deal like, hey, I'm going to work really hard to get your wife a job too. And so we get out here, and like a month before the school year, calls my wife and said, hey, here's a job. And so now we both have jobs in the same school, and we're able to, make it work financially and that sort of thing. So I just felt like God had his hand in it for sure, but there was also a lot of people that really helped make it happen for us. And I think that goes back to the whole relationship things. It's not just between coaches and players. I mean, between coach to coach and adult to adult, and people that, that I kind of just had to put my faith in and say, okay, like, let's make this happen together. And they're some of my best friends now.
Yeah.
So, nothing good really happens on its own, and I think if you take those risks and you put yourself in those situations where, you allow yourself to maybe take a chance, that's when you can really see those benefits. So I did want to share that. But yeah, it was a crazy whirlwind getting out here. It's halfway across the country. And so year one, what's that?
California to Western Colorado.
Yeah, it's completely different. But for me, it's home to me. And that was the thing. I was kind of a fish out of water in Southern California, to be honest. But I mean, these are kids, and people are people, and they're all great people. And I met so many great people that I'm still great friends with at my time at Crean, 7 years there. And I wouldn't trade it for anything now. And so it's just a chapter of your life. And I think that's the cool thing about coaching, is that you end up with a few different chapters, and they're all special to you in their own ways, and so it was fun. But yeah, I don't know what you want me to hit on for Montrose, but
yeah, let me ask this question. How critical, like truly critical, was the support of not only administration, but the community, and I guess I say community more, the immediate community around the football program? How critical was their support and the administrator's support to building your two programs?
I mean, I've worked for 3 principals, and to be honest, have never had a bad one. So I might be lucky, I'm sure that, and I've worked for 3 different athletic directors, and I've enjoyed all 3 of them. They all had, I would consider strengths and weaknesses, but at the end of the day, they were all extremely supportive of what I wanted to do and my vision.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know if I could work for a principal or an AD that didn't at least support my vision, and would say, okay, I'm going to try to do everything I can to help you do that. And one example, when I took over at Montrose, they had the football team was lifting in the morning. They called it 0 hour. It was before school. So the kids were getting to school at about 6:45 or so. And that was year round. It was a class. And so, even during season, they were at school for almost 12 hours between weights and then school and then practice.
Yeah.
And, when I took over, one of the very first things, I went to my principal and my AD and I said, hey, I have an idea that I think will benefit our kids. And when my idea was to move athletic weights into the school day and make it an actual class. So right now we have it during, it's the last hour of every day.
Yeah.
And even better, now I teach PE, so now I'm their teacher. So I get my kids at the start of 4th period every day, and we get them for an hour and a half in school, and then we get them for practice immediately after that. So that was my idea and that was my vision. That was something that we had a little bit of at Crean, not even quite that good, but it was enough that I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I remember my principal at first be like, we can't do that. There's no way we can get all those kids' schedules lined up to make that work. And I remember being like, well, can we try?
Yes.
Like, do you agree that this would be good for them if it's possible?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. And so our assistant principal, who now is my principal, is Heidi Vohringer, and she's honestly amazing. She's one of my favorite administrators I've ever had. Just super supportive. But she was the one at the time. She was an assistant principal, and she said, "Let me see what I can do." And she started working with actually my wife's a counselor now, so she started working with my wife on schedules and stuff. And before you know it, I think the first year, I think I was like 95%. There was like 2 or 3 kids that they couldn't get quite worked in there. But I'm like, that's good enough. Let's run with it. And now we have every single kid on the football team in there. And because they've been able to just kind of make it a part of what we do with our scheduling. If you play football, you go into this class. And so that's an example. But boy, that was sure. We get so much more out of those kids in the weight room at 2 p.m. than we did at 6:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons to it. I mean, obviously some guys are hardcore. They're going to be like, no, I want my kids getting up and teaching them that self-discipline and all that. And I see both sides of that. But for me, it was all about, I just wanted to maximize the amount of work we could do and the quality of that work. And frankly, I wanted my kids not to be at school 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
It was definitely something that benefited us and continues to benefit us, but wouldn't have happened without an open-minded and supportive administration for sure.
Absolutely. I think there's one thing to take away from that is, I think as a head coach, sometimes I think I heard this from someone recently, I can't remember who, but we kind of, are afraid to ask the question or afraid to give a little more pushback. But I love how you said, hey, can we do this? And they said, well, we're not sure. I said, well, why not? Let's give it a try. And I love that follow-up of like, if you think it's good for the kids, I think we should give it a go. And I think we have to be persistent as coaches, because sometimes we'll just go like, oh, I have this amazing idea. And then you go to admin, you're like, hey, I want to do this. And they say, you know what, I just don't think it can happen. And you go, oh, admin's not supportive, they never want to do it. It's like, well,
that's a good point.
Maybe push back a little bit.
Well, that's a really good point, because really at the end of the day, I mean, you could take that 2 ways. I mean, I could have pouted and been like, oh, they don't support me. But really, it's a give and take. It's a relationship is what it is. And, you see their side of things too. And if I'm in that seat, I'm not going to want to just change everything all the time either. I think as long as you have open communication, and I think that's key to being a head coach, honestly, you have to be able to communicate with a variety of people. And you might not even like all of them, but you still have to be able to communicate with them and be able to work with them in a positive way. So,
yeah,
that's a great point.
Coach, I want to hit on that communication component real quick. And I want to know, did you have a specific vision that you laid out for Montrose? Did it change? Did you adjust it? Did you say, hey, when I first got here, my first vision is this? I know you told me your extremely, I guess, heartwarming, palpable, and powerful story of what you just experienced on your way to the state championship game. But is that what you envisioned when you cast your vision?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to read you actually something, but it is like, I truly, like, for me, taking the head football job in Montrose was it's one of them deals you see in a movie where it's like, oh, this guy's a coach here for 30 years. Like, truly, that's what I want to do. I've been here, just finished up year 8. I have, based on my state retirement pension, I have 19 more years before I can even think about retiring. And to be honest with you, I have really no other plans. I truly love what I'm doing. I'm teaching PE in the building. We love living here. My kids go to school, in the town, and there's no way the grass is greener on the other side right now for me personally. And so the vision that I had it when I took the job was to make it that way. And Frosty Westring wrote a book he called "Make the Big Time Where You Are." Now, I fully recognize that Montrose, Colorado isn't like the big time in terms of like high school football. I mean, we play 4A football, so it's pretty good football. It's the second highest class in Colorado, but it's not like, modern day or, there's always a bigger school and a better school. But that, to me, wasn't the appeal. For me, I wanted to be at a community. I wanted to be able to build those relationships. One of the coolest things for me now is knowing all of the kids that are coming up through the youth program, and I'm friends with their parents, and I'm looking forward to when my kid gets to be in the program, here in a few more years. And so that was my vision, truthfully. And that relates to, I think, what I kind of cast as the vision of the program. And I'm going to read it to you because it's kind of ironic because I haven't even changed it. So I wrote this my first year. One of my assistant coaches who was, sort of mentoring me and like helping me kind of learn about the town, he actually challenged me. He's like, I want to know what your vision for the football program is. And so I gave it quite a bit of thought, and I wrote this. I said, to build and maintain a successful football program that competes for a championship every year, along with their achievements on the field, my players will develop a hard work ethic, positive winning attitude, confidence, self-control, team unity, a caring heart, and strong moral values. My goal is for every kid and their parents in the entire town of Montrose to want to play football at the high school. And so I've kept it because we work on it constantly, but it's been super rewarding that it's kind of almost true at this point. So, but
Coach, that's so cool. When I got to Troy, I wrote my 5-year plan for success. And each year it had specific goals that I wanted to achieve within boosters, within my coaching staff, within the community, and then within the win column. And man, the first 4 years, it was sad. Like, we were nowhere near my goals. We were in some of them, but honestly, if I look at the chart, I'm like, no, we missed on a lot. It was a lot of persistent work and a lot of just toil from so many people that by year 5, literally every single column that I had was met, and it was amazing. Like, I remember I recast my vision because I redo my coach pamphlet and my philosophy every year. I redid the chart for my next 5 years, and I was looking at that. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it didn't, the crazy thing is it didn't look how I wanted it to look year 4, but year 5, everything was met. And I think for me, that kind of gave me power of like, okay, set a vision and just work towards it. It may not look like that in year 2, 3, or 4, but it will be in the eventual years. And I also think you said something that's very critical for coaches to understand is that you are playing checkers and not you're playing chess and not checkers, because you're looking at this as your 20-year home.
Yeah.
A lot of time coaches go in and they're like, oh, I'm going to turn this program around, make my name, and then move on. Where I think it's really important for us to say, no, my feet are here. I'm here. I'm going to invest everything that I can into this place. I think it's really important.
I 100% agree. And I felt that same way at Crean. I mean, I never planned on living in Southern California for my whole life. So I guess maybe that's not true. But I'll tell you this, I gave everything I had to that program for 7 straight years. And I still, follow their games, and when they win, I'm happy about it. You know what I mean? And it's like my second school. You know what I mean? Like, I still feel a lot of pride towards that, and I really go back to that. Make that big time where you are, and I don't care if you're coaching 8-man football. It still matters, and it matters to the community, and it matters to those kids, and that motivates me a lot now, is trying to help this group of kids that are coming through be successful. It's way less about me and my personal goals now as it is just about like trying to help this group of kids, be successful, because they're only here for 4 short years.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Coach, I love that. I'm gonna kind of hit on 2 things before we end. But one of them is I want you to talk about the pivot you made in year 2 at Montrose, after I believe you lost to a team that ran a very near and dear scheme to my heart.
Yeah.
And kind of what that looked like again, because I think there's a lot of strategy that goes into a turnaround, and this one I think is critical. So go ahead and speak to it, please.
Yeah, sure. So year 1 of we were, as a head coach, we were 7-4. We had a decent team. We really did, but we went down, and the one game that really stuck with me forever was we went down to Rifle, Colorado, to a school that was a lot smaller than us, and truly on paper that we should be able to beat every single time. And we lost to them in a close game, back and forth, but we gave up 40. And we gave up 40 to the beautiful wing T offense. And it was one of those moments in my life where I was like, man, this should not be this hard to stop, and we can't stop this. and we have better players. And so that was a big moment, because out of that, kind of what ended up happening was I knew one of the coaches on staff, and he was a great young guy that was passionate about football that I had a couple connections with personally. And at that time, he's 5 years younger than me. He was in his 20s. And so I knew that he, had a desire to coach football and call an offense. And so I called him up and I said, hey, I want you to consider moving to Montrose. And, I want you to eventually, I'm going to make you the OC. I'm going to let you call the offense, and I want you to run the wing T. And it took a couple months of kind of a lot of meetings with him and convincing him, but he eventually agreed to do that. And without him, his name is Jake Appling, and without Jake, there's no way that we would be where we are now. Even, forget the wins and losses, but just the program stability. He coaches all of my offensive skill kids. I coach the O-line, and we have a couple other offensive assistants that help us, but for the most part, it's me and him offensively. And that was a major shift, because we went to Delaware wing T, and I had never coached that before. I'd played against it a couple times, not done well, so I knew that it could be done, but I had a lot to learn again. And, I remember sitting with Jake and meeting. We went and we flew to Pittsburgh for the Wing T clinic that year. And I just try to learn as much as we can. But truly, even in year one, we didn't know all that much about it. I would say now, after 8 years, I don't know if I'm an expert, because some of those guys have been coaching Wing T for 40 years, but, I know a lot about wing T now. But in year one, it's like, okay, I can run trap and buck sweep and maybe the belly series, but I don't even know if we're good at it, and I remember going into our first game that year just being completely, it's probably the most nervous I've ever been in Montrose, because I wanted it to work.
Yeah.
And I wanted it's a risk that you take when you make a shift like that. And we went in and played a really good Grand Junction Central team that year. And played some good defense. And I legitimately think we had 4 running plays installed, and we didn't have our whole offense in yet, because we wanted to try to get good at the few plays we had. And we ended up beating them by a touchdown, and it sort of just kind of kick-started our season and really this whole time of running Delaware wing T. And we've mixed some triple option into it now too. So we have a lot of different things, but we were able to kind of get on a roll, and we started that first year 8-0. And it was such a critical moment, because not only did the rest of the coaching staff say like, wow, they're bought in, the players are bought in, the administration and the schools like, wow, this is awesome, we love what you guys are doing, and it just made it really easy, honestly. So I think we just kind of got lucky, to be honest with you, for winning some of those early games, but I'd rather be lucky than good sometimes anyway. So that was a great year. Another year I'll never forget. We were, when we look back at like some of the teams I've had, that wasn't even close to our best talent-wise, but things just lined up. And I think we caught some people by surprise that maybe like had never played against us or anything like us before. And again, didn't know how to stop us. And so it was fun for sure. But yeah, we ain't never going back now. We're part of the cult.
I love it, Coach. Well, I really don't have anything else. I love the conversation with us. Do you have anything that you want to add that you feel like we didn't touch upon? You've had a lot of great experiences over these, is it 15 years, 17 years really of coaching? Anything you want to add?
No, I just, my biggest thing, if anybody wants to reach out, feel free. I love talking football. At this point, my passion now is just trying to help kids and help people and doing the right thing. And I've always been a believer in if you do the right thing consistently, that eventually, things are going to go your way. It might not happen the first time or the second time, but I think, that'd be my advice to people, is just stay the course and be true to yourself and the things that you believe are important. And I think, relationships with those kids. And my number one job right now is player motivation. It's getting kids that want to run through a wall. I remember being in high school and I would have headbutted the wall for my head coach. And I've always thought to myself that if I can get kids to play as hard for me as I was willing to play for him, then we're going to be just fine. No matter what plays we call or no matter what kids we got here, we're always going to have a chance to be pretty good. And it makes it fun. just that culture piece. I think culture in your program is I think it's the most important thing. And I really do at this point. I spend the majority of my time focused on that sort of thing. Jake and my other assistants, we just had a meeting yesterday and he's like, "Do you want to put in midline next year?" And I'm like, "If you want to put in midline, go ahead." I said, "I don't care. I'm just, I'll try to learn how to block it and we'll see what we can do." So anyway.
Well, thank you so much, Brett. I appreciate the time. I wish nothing but the best for Montrose, and so thankful that, Jake emailed me a year ago about this time and, talk about a guy that just loves to learn. He said, "Hey, I want to learn from you." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
Okay, we can learn, you can learn from me. And lo and behold, I'm learning more from him. Appreciate the time, man. I wish you luck, and thank you so much for being on the podcast.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Welcome, Coach. Have a great evening.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Turnaround Series presented by CoachTube. Big thanks to our guests for sharing their insight on what it takes to rebuild a program and create a winning culture. Remember, if you're working to turn things around, having proven strategies and the right resources is a game changer. That's where CoachTube comes in. It's a technology platform designed to connect you with on-demand courses from top coaches, state associations, and charitable organizations. So keep learning, keep growing, and keep leading your team to success. And if you're a coach with knowledge to share, CoachTube makes it easy to create and distribute your own training content. Teach what you know, help other coaches, and build your brand. Visit CoachTube.com to explore courses or reach out to me, Keith, at CoachTube if you're ready to share your expertise. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and join us next time for more insights from the best in the game.